What's going on, my fantasy footballers, and welcome to another video for the love of fantasy football, where I, Richie K, your boy, take you through my insights of fantasy football. Real quick, I just want to say that I did upload a video Sunday morning at 9 o'clock that I really didn't post about. So if you could go check out that video where I discussed the top 5 players that I thought were going to produce the best in week 1 of the NFL season. Boy, was I right. 3 of my top 5 players that I thought were going to be the best of the best during week 1 were phenomenal. However, let's take a look at the 2 players that actually didn't produce very well. The first one was Phillip Rivers. I thought Phillip Rivers was going to have a great first game of the season. Boy, was I wrong. Personally, I thought Phillip Rivers was going to have one of the better games of all quarterbacks around the league, because he was playing the Jacksonville defense. However, I was mistaken. So I want to apologize to my viewers who did end up starting him. He didn't really have that bad of a game because he had over 350 yards, which I thought he was going to have, but he only had 1 touchdown and 2 interceptions, which wasn't what I was thinking he was going to have. But this isn't Madden, and you can't control the outcome. The next player that I thought was going to have a dominant game was Austin Eckler, and he didn't prove me right either. Austin Eckler did actually finish with almost 100 yards in total offense, but it was not very exciting. He didn't have any touchdowns. He had, I think, 1 reception or 2 receptions for only about 6 to 10 yards, and the whole Chargers offense just looked slow. I thought Tyrod Taylor was going to make this offense look a little more exciting and a little bit better, but he proved that the way he played with the Browns and the Bills is going to continue with the Chargers offense. And I really do hope that the Chargers see this and put in Justin Herbert, who actually might make more down the field plays. All right, let's get past that. The 3 players that I said that were going to be the most productive per their specific positions were Noah Fant, Josh Jacobs, and Robert Woods. Like I said in my last video, I thought Robert Woods was going to have a dominant game, and he did, which ended up making it worse for the Dallas defense, and the Dallas Cowboys lost, which honestly sucks so bad, and I really don't want to talk about it. But whatever, it's week 1. You move on. There's 15 other games that you got to worry about, and hopefully Dallas can recuperate. Fortunately, Robert Woods was the main target for Jared Goff this game. Right out of the gate, Robert Woods caught 3 passes on the first drive of the Rams' possession. That already made me think that Robert Woods is going to have a dominant game, and he did. He had almost 10 receptions and over 100 yards receiving. However, he didn't get a touchdown. Next up is Josh Jacobs. I told y'all Josh Jacobs was going to have 3 touchdowns and over 100 yards. He had 3 touchdowns and over 100 yards. Carolina's defense is horrible, and I told you Josh Jacobs was going to run all over them and feast on that defense. John Gruden is going to get this man the ball a lot, rushing and receiving, so look for him to continue having a huge season and be productive game in and game out. And lastly, Noah Fant. Noah Fant was the primary target for Drew Lock, at least in the first half. He had 5 receptions, over 80 yards, and a touchdown just in the first half alone. However, watching the second half, Noah Fant was hardly even targeted. This really surprised me because the game was such a low-scoring game that I figured Drew Lock and the Broncos offense would actually try to air it out more. Although Drew Lock had a decent game, he was targeting Jerry Jeudy a lot in the second half compared to the first half. However, Noah Fant did end up having a good game overall, so I do expect him to have more games like this, especially if Courtland Sutton continues to be out. So if you have Noah Fant in your starting lineup, keep him there because he's going to produce well and he's going to keep giving you more fantasy points for your team. Let's go ahead and get into the top players to pick up for your team off of the waiver wire. These players not only produced in week 1 of the NFL season, but they also are going to produce for a longer period of time, either because they're going to be taking over for someone that got injured, or their offense is going to be using them a lot more. So the players that I believe you should pick up for your team are Dallas Goedert, Scott Miller, Malcolm Brown, Peyton Barber, Gardner Minshew, and Benny Snell. With these players, you don't want to start them right away, but you do want to stash them on the bench, especially if they start having more consistent play and more points. That way, you can either choose to start them, or you can use them as trade bait for other players that you actually might need. However, with a player like Benny Snell, who will be taking over the starting running back role for the Steelers for now, you always have to remember that James Conner is going to be coming back, either in the short term or in a couple games. So just be wary that Benny Snell is not going to be the starter for long, unless he actually does start providing more offense than James Conner and is more productive in the offense. Lastly, let's get into the top players that I think are going to have amazing performances for week 2 of the NFL season. For starters, Josh Allen. I really didn't think Josh Allen was going to be that good, even to start the season. However, he ended up having a great game, albeit against the Jets, but he still showed why he is still an up-and-coming player and worthy of starting. The Bills are going against the Dolphins, which is another reason why I chose Josh Allen as one of my starters. If you saw last week, Cam Newton ran wild against the Dolphins defense, and I think Josh Allen will exhibit the same type of performance and even better because Josh Allen is a better passer than Cam Newton is now. The next player that I think is going to have a top performance amongst quarterbacks is Tom Brady. Tom Brady and the Buccaneers are going against the Carolina Panthers. And you saw what Josh Jacobs and the Raiders did against that Panthers defense last week. So this is a huge reason why I think Tom Brady's going to have a monster bounce back game and is probably going to throw for over 300 yards. Tom Brady is pissed off, especially after the way he performed last week against the Saints. So, going into week 2, this dude is going to be a man on a mission to prove everyone that the hype of the Bucs is real. I do expect Tom Brady to have, like I said, over 300 yards passing, Chris Godwin and Mike Evans to have one of the better games of the season, and Tom Brady could have another rushing touchdown if the Buccaneers are within the 5-yard line. Next up is receivers. Last week, I said Robert Woods was going to have a great game against the Cowboys secondary, and he did. This week, I think the same thing. I really do believe Robert Woods and or Cooper Kupp are going to have great games against that Philadelphia secondary. Philadelphia looked horrible last week, and I really did not expect them to play the way they did against the Washington football team. So I'm really expecting Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods to feast against the Philadelphia secondary and get, again, over 100 yards receiving and probably a touchdown. The next receiver that I'm going to talk about had a monster week 1 performance in the NFL. This week, I think he's going to have another monster game because he is going against the Cowboys secondary. This player is not Julio Jones, but Calvin Ridley. If you check out my video from last week, I said Robert Woods was going to be the main target because Cooper Kupp, being the number 1 receiver in that Rams offense, is going to be keyed on by the defense a lot more. This week, Julio Jones, the insanely crazy kind of receiver he is for sure going to be keyed on by the Cowboys defense. So, Calvin Ridley, the fast Alabama receiver, is going to have probably at least 120 yards because Matt Ryan he's going to be watching the game film from the Rams and Cowboys game and feast off of the quick passes to Calvin Ridley. I honestly think that if the Cowboys don't fix their secondary issues, any number 2 receiver that the Cowboys are going to go against is going to feast because the Cowboys aren't going to stop a dang nosebleed. So if you have Calvin Ridley, or if you can pick him up, plop him into your starting lineup, and forget about it. Next up, for running backs, we have Malcolm Brown and Ronald Jones for the Bucs. I really don't need to talk about why I think you should start Ronald Jones this week because they are going against the Carolina's defense. So that automatically assumes that he's going to have a great game. He didn't have a bad game last week against the Saints defense, and the Saints defense, especially the run defense, is pretty solid and top 5 in the NFL. So I expect Ronald Jones to have over 100 yards and a touchdown in week 2 of the NFL season against the Carolina defense. Now, talking about Malcolm Brown, he showed that he can be the workhorse for the Rams, even though the Rams said that they want to have a running back by committee offense. However, I don't know if it was the ability of Malcolm Brown or the disability of the Cowboys defense which made Malcolm Brown look like a superstar. However, I do think if you pick up Malcolm Brown and start him against the Philadelphia defense, you'll see some great production out of him, especially in the red zone or within the 5-yard line, where he will get most of the touches and get a couple touchdowns like he did against the Cowboys. And lastly, we're going to talk about tight ends. The 2 tight ends that I think are going to have one of the better games compared to the rest of the tight end position is Noah Fant again and Jonnu Smith, the Tennessee Titans tight end. Talking about Noah Fant again is because I don't know how Courtland Sutton is going to play, or if he is going to play. AC joint sprains are something you should definitely not mess with, especially if you're a receiver in the NFL. You're constantly raising your arms above your head, you're getting hit in the shoulder so much, and you're even landing on your shoulders so much that consistent force and repetitive trauma is going to make that injury worse and worse over time. So I really don't expect Courtland Sutton to play again this week. Another reason why I think Noah Fant should be in your starting lineup again is because they're going against the Steelers defense. The Steelers played the Giants on Monday night, and Evan Ingram had a pretty decent game going, if not for Daniel Jones being the starting quarterback for the New York Giants. So I think Drew Lock is going to try to air out the ball a lot more this game, and Noah Fant should be the receptor of all those targets. I expect him to have at least another 80 yards and a touchdown or two in this game. Lastly, Jonnu Smith. Last week against the Denver Broncos, he had about 40 yards and a touchdown in the red zone. So I do expect him to have the same type of, if not better, production this week against the Jacksonville Jaguars. I know the Titans are a run heavy team, as they gave Derrick Henry over 30 carries in the game on Monday night. But I think Ryan Tannehill does want to target Jonnu Smith a lot more and get him going in the offense, which will also open up the field a lot more for Derrick Henry to run the ball. So look for Jonnu Smith to get probably around 50 yards and at least a touchdown against the Jaguars defense. All right, my fantasy footballers, so that's what I got for you today. My best waiver wire pickups and my top fantasy starters for week 2 of the NFL season. If you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel. Click the little bell icon so you can get notifications of when I upload my videos. And if you like the video, like the video. Please continue to support me and my channel so that I can continue to produce more videos for you, the rookie fantasy footballers, or you, the veteran fantasy footballers, who might want a little more insight on fantasy football. Comment in the comment section down below of what other waiver wire targets you're looking to pick up in this week of the NFL season, and what trades you're trying to make for the players you want on your team. Again, I appreciate all the love and support that you guys have shown me. I hope that you can continue to show your support and love for me and this channel. I hope you guys have a blessed day, and for the love of fantasy football, may your Sundays be epic.